So, as I say, I regularly get asked questions about sort of SIM cards and roaming SIM cards in particular, or multi-net SIM cards, asking what they are, how they work, and how are they different from a normal standard UK SIM card. So today, this webinar is going to hopefully answer a few questions, and I'm also going to try and dispel a few myths, if I can, about what's roaming SIM cards. So key questions I got asked on a regular basis, and these are what sort of I suppose defined the webinar today, the presentation, is what is a roaming SIM card and how does it work? I get asked a lot about the difference between steered and non-steered SIM cards and what the differences are. Why I should sell this, or why a customer should use these. Can I still get fixed IP on a roaming SIM card? How do I manage the costs of a SIM card that's using multiple networks? And what are the different options to choose from in relation to a roaming SIM card? So hopefully I'll answer all those questions, and then anything else at the end we'll also cover off. So what is a roaming SIM card? How does it work? I've heard roaming SIMs called various names to describe them, such as roaming SIMs, multi-net SIMs, all-net SIMs. I even got asked the other day for an auto-negotiating SIM card, but it's a very simple concept. It's basically a SIM that will roam on multiple mobile network operators within its own geographical location. As such, it will give a device access to more than one network, so it should, in theory, offer you more resilience and a more consistent service. So how do you get your SIMs to do this? Well, basically, if you're using a standard UK network SIM card, you can't. There's no agreements in place in the UK that allow, for an example, O2 SIMs to roam across Voda and Voda SIMs to roam across EE, or 3 SIMs to roam across any other network, as an example. So if you use a standard O2 SIM in the UK, it will only connect to O2. However, saying that, mobile operators do enter into roaming agreements with other networks. And if SIMs are outside of their home country or home network, then they will roam. So if you take your device outside of the UK and your SIM card's home network is not available, it can connect to a different mobile network operator abroad. This roaming feature is especially useful if you're traveling on holiday or out for business, because you can connect to the internet via mobile data using a network that's not your own. And more importantly, it won't usually just find one network when outside of the UK. It will usually have access to multiple networks in the same location. This probably means your current single network UK SIM is going to offer you a more resilient service when you're abroad than it does while you're in the UK. So if you take your SIM to a data device in France, you'll probably get a better service than a local SIM would get using French SIM in a data device over there. So flip this on its head. If you want to have a SIM that will use all of the networks in the UK, you need to have a SIM that's mobile network operator is based outside of the UK, if that makes sense. Now, if you're wanting to use voice and SMS, etc., and have a device in a mobile phone, this could be a problem, because if you're using a foreign SIM, the mobile number would be foreign. But for data-only utilization, as we have in IoT, the mobile number is pretty much irrelevant. So this works for us. So the way to be able to offer a SIM that roams across multiple networks in the UK is to buy that SIM from a non-UK mobile network operator. And in principle, suppose this sounds simple, but for a smaller partner or an end user, it's not that easy to get a foreign mobile network operator to sell you a SIM on a contract. And particularly if you want to get fixed IP and use private APNs, etc., it's going to be quite costly to do. It makes it very difficult unless you invest heavily and are doing significant volumes. And this is where Zest4 come in, because we've already made the investments. We have fixed links and APNs in place with multiple foreign mobile network operators now, so that we can offer you access to a non-UK data SIM that will roam across multiple networks in the UK. But there are other things to consider as well. Even if you have a roaming or multi-net SIM that's being provided by a non-UK supplier, it may still not have access to all networks. It may have preferential networks. By default, cellular devices connect to their home network of the mobile provider of the SIM cards. But when the home network is not available, mobile networks have strict agreements in place with other operators in countries that their home network doesn't cover. Some of these could be based on local access, but if I'm being honest, most of them are governed by cost. So if this is a factor, you may find that whenever your device is outside of your home network, in some cases, the SIM card connects you to a device's preferred partner. This is what's known as steered roaming. I'm going to touch on this in a second. The mobile operator can decide which partner network subscribers can use. And there are two different ways of roaming steered SIMs: SIM-based steering and network-based steering. SIM-based steering uses a list of preferred networks directly stored in the SIM in order to decide the best roaming partner given the situation. The list, however, has to be updated continuously, as roaming agreements are always subject to change. This method is generally used by the mobile network operator if they have one preferred network, but no preference on the others. So you may find a SIM card will connect initially to EE as its preferred network, and if EE is not available, it will connect onto anything else that's out there. The other way of steering a SIM is network-based steering. This is remotely integrated into the mobile network. As a device tries to connect to a roaming partner, the roaming partner will establish contact with the home network. Then, based on current agreements, the steering system decides whether this roaming partner is the right partner of choice for the subscriber. In this case, the roaming request is either granted or not granted. If the device receives a message from the home network saying it's not granted, it will automatically try another network. This is typically used when a SIM is roaming outside of its home location. The other option we then have, to complicate it further, is dual network or multi-net SIMs that only use a small number of networks. So using network-based steering, some mobile network operators will offer a SIM that will roam, but only on a couple of specified networks. Using the UK as an example, this may be SIMs that only roam onto 2 or 3 available networks. In some applications, 2 or 3 networks is all that's needed to offer resilience. So using this type of SIM will probably be more cost efficient if your device and your application will work with it. The network selection process typically happens automatically, so you wouldn't even notice it. However, in some instances, you can manually select a network, but that would have to be device driven. The last option we have is a non-steered SIM, or unsteered SIM as some people call it. It's a SIM that's provided by a mobile network operator that has no network preferencing whatsoever built into it. This means it treats all available networks the same and will randomly connect to any one of the available networks. Keyword there being randomly. Because at this stage, I'd like to dispel a myth that is out there regarding non-steered SIMs. There's a common misconception that some SIMs will always connect to the strongest network, and that's not really correct. There's no intelligence or capability in a SIM for it to do this. It can select a network from a list that's above a minimum threshold, but without some help from the device, it can't always select the strongest network. It's the device working in conjunction with the SIM that selects the network. Some smart devices do have the capability to scan networks and ensure that the SIM always connects to the strong network. And some also scan while the SIM's connected and will drop a network connection and select a new one if the signal deteriorates. But just because you have a non-steered roaming SIM, don't expect this to happen if your device doesn't have the capability or the intelligence to do it. And at Zest4, we offer all of the above variants, and we'll aim to provide you with some advice, some support on which of these variants is best suited to your application. So the other question, why should I be considering a roaming SIM? Why should I sell this? Why is it better for my customer? One of the key benefits of a roaming SIM is cost. Some mobile network operators charge more than others for data usage. And if you had to individually negotiate a price with all 4 networks in the UK for data used by a single SIM across all 4 networks, you'd find it almost impossible to create a fixed price. You wouldn't be able to predict how much data that SIM would use on each one of the 4 networks in any given month. So if the base price for these 4 networks is different, it'd be almost impossible to bill. Think about rolling that out into the EU and all the different permutations and price costs, and it's almost impossible. So when we provide you with a roaming SIM, we give you a fixed rate for the data, irrespective of which mobile network it uses for that data. So as an example, if we provide a SIM with 1 gig of data for a fixed price of, say, £3, irrespective of which network it uses that data on, you won't pay any extra for that, even if the underlying network is charging more than £3 for a gig of data. And this is the same for EU roaming. So again, we agree a fixed price for the data. It could be, I don't know, £3.50 for EU roaming data. And that means whatever country it lands in and whatever network it uses in that country, you won't have to worry about the underlying cost of the mobile network it's on. All you'll pay is the agreed fixed price for that data. And if we think about the last sort of couple of slides based on steered versus non-steered SIMs, the easy assumption would be to make that a non-steered 4-network SIM is always going to be the best to go for. And in some cases, this can be correct. But the challenge you have, the more networks you have on a SIM and the less restrictions you have, generally means the higher the cost of the solution because of the risk of the underlying costs of the different mobile networks. It will always be a fixed cost, but where a steered solution may cost you, and again, I'm making these numbers up, £3 for a gig of data, a non-steered solution could cost you £3.50 for the same 1 gig of data. So fixed cost, irrespective of the network, to you and your customer is always going to be key with it using a roaming SIM. The other area on here, it says resilience. I'll give you 2 examples of this. You may have a SIM in a device in a fixed location. Before you roll the device out, you do a network survey prior to installation. You find out which of the 4 networks offers you the best signal in that location, and you decide to go with a single network SIM. But should there be any issues with that single network at some point in time, you could start to suffer with a lack of connectivity. It could be network congestion, a cell site going down, or an even bigger network outage. Irrespective of which of these causes the issue, if you don't have a backup network, then you could suffer, or your customer could suffer, with a lack of connectivity. Or maybe it's a SIM in a device that's not in a fixed location. If this is the case, and you use a single network SIM, you're not only likely to experience the challenges that you've already been discussed about network outages, but also open yourself up to network black spots or fringe connectivity challenges that could affect speed and throughput. By having a SIM that will access more than one network, you're never going to eliminate every outage, but you are going to mitigate the risk significantly and offer a much more resilient connectivity solution for your customer. And the third benefit is deployment, and particularly in regards to SIM stock holding and rollout. If you're using a single network SIM, you'll have to keep at least 4 line items of stock in the UK, 1 for each network. Then prior to rollout, you need to establish which of the 4 networks will offer the best solution in that location. If it's a large rollout, you'll probably end up with multiple different network SIMs in the same customer. And this might not sound like a huge issue, but it gives complications like having to manage multiple shared data pools and most definitely mean multiple price points, all of which make your life and your customer's life more difficult to do an IoT rollout. So using a single roaming SIM, you have 1 SIM across all networks, 1 stock item to think about, no network coverage checks, only 1 network data pool to manage, and a single price point. So when people ask, why should I be considering a roaming SIM? If the cost is equal to, or sometimes less than a single network SIM, it's pretty much a no-brainer in my book. And of course, all the roaming SIMs we supply, irrespective of network and which service it uses, we will make sure it uses our private APN for data transmission. This means all of the data will be routed via a secure network, usage information will be available via the Zest4 Connect portal, and of course, everything will have a fixed IP as standard. For anyone that's not used our portal yet, it's a fully functional SIM management platform that allows you to manage your entire SIM estate, irrespective of mobile network, all in one place. Track SIM usage individually, by sub-estates, or by the entire estate. Gives you geographical filtering, monitoring data alerts and caps, building custom filters. You can organize your estate through tags and categories, and it gives you enhanced SIM security. So whether you're using a single network SIM or a roaming SIM, the service that you'll get and the fixed IP and the private APN and everything that you expect on an IoT service will be identical. So I spoke earlier briefly about dual network SIMs. These are SIMs that will connect to one of two different networks in the UK, as well as a list of EU networks. So we have two options here. We have a SIM that will connect to either Vodafone or EE, and we have a SIM that will connect to Vodafone or O2. These are ideal for smaller data bundles that need a bit of resilience, but don't necessarily need all four networks. On smaller data bundles of sub 500 meg, these can work out a much more cost-effective solution than using a single network SIM. We then have steered SIMs. I have to be honest, this is our most popular option that we have at Zest4, purely down to price point and resilience. We've got two options. We have a SIM that connects to O2 as its primary network connection. If that's not available, you use one of the other three networks. And the most popular one we do is a SIM that connects to EE as its primary connection, and then we'll roam onto the other three networks. Most people find that EE, from an IoT point of view, is probably the best data network in the UK. So it offers a great service. It's not heavily steered, so it doesn't hang on to bad connections or weak signals. And if I just show you a page from our portal, this is one of our Zest4 Connect Plus SIMs, you'll see it regularly changes networks. This is in a device that I use for testing and demoing. When I'm based at home, EE is the strongest network I use anyway, so most of my stuff is done through EE. And I can see in a fixed location, it was just sat on EE and it's been working fine. As soon as I started moving around though, I went into an area where clearly EE wasn't the best solution, so it moved on to Telefonica. And later that day, it moved again onto Vodafone. So you can see this SIM is doing exactly what you'd want and need it to do. It's making sure that irrespective of where you are, you're getting the best from your SIM and your device. And from a pricing point of view, because we have it steered onto one network initially, we can really give a great price point on the solution itself. And again, as I said earlier, all come with fixed IP across a private APN. And the final option that we have is a non-steered solution. And again, we have two choices on this one. We have a 3-network non-steered solution or a 4-network non-steered solution. As these are the most flexible services, they are the most expensive roaming solutions, but not massively more expensive. It's just a small premium. So, roaming SIMs, a very, very quick overview of roaming SIMs, what they are, what they do, the differences, and what we can provide to you from Zest4. With SIMs that will suit virtually any application, any business case, ensuring you get the best price point. And if you're unsure which of these solutions is right for you or your customer, we're on hand to help you decide this and make sure you get it spot on. So I'm going to finish now and hand over to you guys for any questions in case there's anything that you feel I haven't covered off. To ask a question, all you need to do is simply unmute yourself and fire away, and I'll do what I can to answer it. If I can't answer it today, I'll take it away and come back to you. Robert, are these SIMs 5G enabled? Depends on the underlying network, in all honesty. So as an example, if we're using one of our Orange France SIMs, potentially we could get 5G whilst the SIM was over in France. However, you wouldn't typically get, I can't even say it, typically get 5G whilst it was roaming. So you'd be unlikely to find a roaming SIM in the UK that is using a 5G network in the UK. If that makes sense. Cheers, Robert. Tim, what's the largest volume of data? Thanks, Tim. As I said earlier, we don't have any restrictions on the amount of data. We can do anything from one kilobyte up to multiple terabytes. Clearly, the more data you have, the more it's going to cost. But we can build you a bespoke bundle for any solution. There are no limits. Anyone else? Robert, thank you again. Glad you're on, Robert. Sorry, Robert, that question disappeared on me. Can you ask that again? It disappeared before I got a chance to read it through. Are you able to take your SIMs out of the EU, such as the US? So, yes, we have roaming solutions that work outside of the EU. Again, the farther afield you go, the generally sort of the more cost that's involved. So typically, we would offer you a price point for a UK roaming SIM. If you then said you wanted the SIM to work in the EU, we'd be able to offer you a price point that covered UK and EU. Outside of the EU, you just need to be a bit more specific on your order and say, I want a SIM that's going to work in North America and Canada, etc., or wherever it may be. And we can build you an option that would work in the location. The more locations you have, the more expensive it's likely to be. And the more remote the location, again, the more expensive it's likely to be because of the underlying network charges. But yes, short answer is we can do it. Anything is possible. Do you offer SIM routers with intelligence? Yes, we do. So from a router point of view, we tend to stick to ones that we know work. So our standard go-to router is a range of routers from Teltonika. They have a small amount of intelligence built into them, and you can do load balancing and things like that. But if you want a fully intelligent router, then we use a company called Robustel to provide our routers. They're a little bit more expensive, but they have built into them what's called smart roaming. So they will actively scan the networks available and move a SIM onto the obviously the right network and the right solution for the data that's being transmitted at a time. Typically a little bit more expensive than the Teltonikas, but again, it's all down to the solution and the service that you're looking for, really. Where does the internet breakout occur? So the internet breakout would initially occur in the UK, but then it would route back to the initial provider and then come back into the UK. But I have to say the slowest part of the transmission is the bit that's hitting the cellular network. Once it actually gets down to the fixed links, there's virtually sort of no lag on that one. So it would initially break out in the UK. It would go back to the home network and then back again. But latency is negligible. The routers offer fixed backup. Yeah, again, whether it's Teltonika or whether it's one of our Robustel routers, we can build failover solutions into them. So we have a number of customers, partners out there that sell these types of solutions. So effectively, the router would be using a fixed line service as a primary service and have a SIM card in there with a small amount of data on. If the primary service goes down, it would automatically fail onto the cellular service and then switch back again. Just on the routers, I'll touch on this slightly because one of the services that we do offer is full configuration of the router. So effectively, if you tell us exactly what your customer needs, what we'll do, we'll activate the SIM card, put it into the router and configure the router with the SIM card's APN and IP details. We can set up the SSID and passwords that your customer needs. And if they're looking for failover, we can pre-configure all that. We'll then dispatch the router, configured and tested either to you or directly to your end customer. So effectively, all they should have to do at the point of receiving it is plug it in and turn it on, and it should be operational. Another question here, what is the longevity of roaming SIMs on the UK networks, as UK SIMs on foreign networks have a maximum allowed roaming duration? So it depends on the provider. The providers that we use, we don't have any restrictions for permanent roaming. Once we go outside of the UK, for countries like Brazil, Canada, Turkey, various others, there are restrictions on the amount of time you can roam. And if you're found to be roaming over, it's usually about 90 days, then they reserve the right to kick you off. But with the roaming SIMs that we offer currently in the UK and the EU, we don't have any restrictions on the length of time that you can roam. Question here from James Khan. Can you give some typical user case examples for roaming SIMs? Wow. We use roaming SIMs in pretty much every type of solution that we do, James. It's hard to define just one single application, whether it be for taxi services, so a taxi is always connected, or whether it be for ANPR cameras that are not in locations where they've got sort of fixed services. We do some for hospitals. We've got some in solar panels. We've got some in gates. There's not really a typical user. Effectively, if you're using an IoT SIM and it's a single network SIM, you are restricted to one network and potential challenges if that network goes down. So by swapping it to a multi-network SIM, you're just mitigating your risk slightly. So a typical user of a data roaming SIM is anyone that's got an IoT rollout. So Steve McIntyre, is there going to be an option for voice roaming? We do have some of our mobile network operators that allow us to put voice across the roaming SIMs. However, it's expensive and there's no bundled minutes. So effectively, you'll be charged per minute for the voice, and it can be quite expensive. Some 15, 20 pence per minute, but some can be 80 and 90 pence a minute. So it's not an ideal solution for voice, Stephen. And I don't really see that changing in the IoT space, if that makes sense. Guest, I've got no name here, but I'll answer the question. Why would someone use roaming SIMs as opposed to eSIM based SIM cards? Not a lot of difference, to be honest with you. We offer eSIMs here at Zest4, and we offer two types of eSIMs. We can either do an electronic SIM, i.e. so there's no plastic, or we can use an eSIM profile on a plastic SIM for devices that haven't got a SIM built into them. And they work in exactly the same way as a roaming SIM would. The only difference on the eSIM is they're over-the-air programmable. So effectively, you can turn a network off and on, whereas on a roaming SIM, it's typically issued with a list of networks, and it will stay with those list of networks. The difference and why someone would use a roaming SIM as opposed to an eSIM, eSIMs, from a costing point of view, work well for smaller data bundles, but once you start getting past sort of 1 gig, 2 gig, 3 gig, they can get very, very expensive on eSIMs, whereas a roaming SIM typically would cost in at that stage. Hi, Martin. Apparently it's Martin West at some name unnamed. Hi, Martin. Been a while since we've spoken. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through to see if there's any questions I've missed. Bear with me a second. I think that's all the questions that we've had through so far. Has anyone else got anything else that they'd like to ask? Oh, sorry, Tim, I missed that one. Will unlimited be available? We don't have any unlimited offerings currently on the roaming SIMs, and I have to be honest, it's probably unlikely that that will be launched. If you look at the unlimited SIMs that we have in the UK, whilst it's unlimited on a single network in the UK, once you start roaming outside the UK on an unlimited SIM, they govern you. O2 and Vodafone both have a restriction of 25 gigabytes per SIM when you're outside the UK. So they don't allow fully unlimited once you leave. And I don't see a lot of the operators doing that on the reverse either, if I'm honest. So it's unlikely, Tim, is the short answer, but you never know. Hi, Steve Richardson. What is a typical ping for these SIMs? Steve, I'll have to get back to you on this one, and I will put a note out to everyone that's joined. I don't know off the top of my head, but I will find out for you, Steve, and come back to you, if that's okay. Anyone else, guys, before we wrap up? We've got time to take a couple more. I think we've got 4 or 5 minutes left. But if not, we can always wrap up early and I'll give you 5 minutes left to get a coffee. Can SMS be enabled? Again, depends on the SIM card and the underlying network we're using, Neil. So if I take our, we have a fixed APN in place with Orange France. So Orange France allow us to use their SIMs in the UK to roam across the UK and the EU. They don't allow any SMS or voice traffic whatsoever to be used on their SIMs. We have a roaming agreement in with Telefónica España, and we've got a fixed APN in place, so we route the data from Telefónica España. They do allow us to put SMS and voice over their SIMs. Again, charged per SMS or charged per voice call rather than a bundle, but they do allow it. So short answer is yes, but it's caveated with the fact that it depends on the underlying network and whether they allow it or not. I hope that makes sense, Neil. Perfect. Looks like we've slowed down on questions now then. So I'll bring the webinar to a close. If anybody has got any more questions, please feel free to give me a call at any point. Drop me an email. If you'd like to find out more about sort of pricing on our SIMs, again, give me a shout. I'll get something over to you. And if you want to take any SIMs, then please get in touch, and I'm sure we'll be able to facilitate all your requirements. Thank you for giving up your time today to listen in. As I say, I will send a link out to everyone that's joined so you can listen again if there's anything you missed. Appreciate your time, and hopefully be doing some business with you soon. Thanks all.